Did we have to buy extra equipment to be able to do this?
It's the 22nd. In case we
Okay.
change.
Are we live?
I don't have
Okay.
a dump button.
We're live.
All right, thanks. Well, good evening, everyone. This is the scheduled meeting of the Finance and Ways and Means Committee of Bowling Green City Council. And the broad purpose of this meeting is to discuss current city finances. I'd just like to say that we will have, this is the first of 3 scheduled meetings to receive updates from the city administration on BG City finances in this volatile and very uncertain economic situation we're now in. And I think this information is important for this committee and council as a whole as we start to look forward to 2021. It's important for council members to understand the challenges that the administration will be facing when crafting the 2021 budget. To begin, if you look at the agenda, I would like to just briefly draw committee members' attention to the May 4th report that was handed out previously on recycling, dated May 4th and signed by Administrator Lori Treader, because that provides a background on recycling and garbage, or municipal solid waste, as garbage is known, and a summary of the first quarter expenses. And I think it's important, again, to read and understand this report, all of us, and then just set it aside for a bit, because it is the intent and the timing of the next 2 meetings that we receive a second quarter report on the at the July 20th meeting, prior to the July 20th meeting, and a third quarter report on recycling and waste at the 19 October meeting. And I think these reports and the information provided in them will inform council discussions on recycling for the 2021 period and beyond. So that's the purpose of that. And then before, I guess I should back up again, and before we dive into the meat of this agenda, I should back up and let if Sandy and Bill have any opening remarks.
I didn't prepare any remarks.
Just an opportunity.
With regards to recycling, I'm looking forward to taking a close look at it, and say that I have heard from so many people how much they are appreciating the fact that the recycling includes more items that can be recycled now, and they're very appreciative. So there is a fair amount of people who are very willing to pay that extra and go forward. So I don't want to indicate that I'm going to do anything to harm recycling at this point. We don't have enough information to do anything at this.
The only thing I'd say is 2 points. One, I think it's great, Greg, that you're getting us involved and setting up formal meetings throughout the year. And second, in reading the recycling report, we really don't have that many data points. It's good to keep a monitor and also to revise the way that it's shown as we get more data. But there's so many differences between this year and last year that it's really hard to compare. But it's still prudent to check the numbers. So that's a compliment to you as well, Greg.
Thanks. Again, this is both historical and data, and it is a baseline. And future reports will be more in a spreadsheet format where we'll just be able to look at numbers and data. So this was just the baseline document. Okay. And moving on then, the bulk of the time that for this meeting, I anticipate being a presentation from the city administration on our finances. So I will ask our finance director to come forward.
All right, good evening. You have a copy of the slide presentation in front of you, and Joe will be displaying it as well on the TV and for those who are watching at home. The outline really tonight is talking about what's on a lot of people's minds, and that's income tax. So we are certainly going to talk about income tax, but income tax is not the only item that we need to be focused on. There are other things, but trying to project income tax and see where we find. As a governmental agency and city government, we lag in reporting just because everybody else has to get their numbers into us. So we're a small business, feels that impact right away. We feel the impact sometimes up to a quarter and a month away from that initial activities. Some of it's closer than that, some of it's a month, but we still lag. So, and you'll see that in just a moment. So we're going to talk about income tax, who all that affects, other accounts, and then finally just some of the options we have in responding to where we're at. If you'll flip the page, this first graph is one that should be at least familiar. We send this out fairly regularly, and it tracks income tax, what we think we're going to bring in a given month. And it would be lovely if we got income tax in 12 equal installments, but it just doesn't happen that way, which is fine. And April 15th due date, certainly April's always the largest month for us. But as you're well aware, the April 15th deadline has been switched to July. This chart shows kind of our numbers, and if we would have left our April projection in, we would be 1.4 million in the hole for just that month. But we know that since it's changed to July, that we're going to get some of that. So we flip-flopped those 2 months. They're both months following a quarter. We thought it made sense to be able to flip-flop those months. So we've kind of just flipped our projection for April and July. And so on the next slide, you'll see that. And so those two graphs are identical, other than we flipped the April projection and the July projection. And you'll notice that we had a very good first quarter. All across the state, communities were experiencing the same thing, and that is that the first quarter of the year was exceeding expectations nearly across the board in many communities, and we were no exception. Our first month was off, but that January was a 3-pay month for many businesses. That kind of caught up to us, so we were running well ahead of our projection. Really through April, we were $252,000 ahead of where we thought we would be for the year. But again, the COVID activity started in March, and we're still showing March numbers that were very strong, April numbers that were on that newly revised target. And that's because of the reporting delay that we have. Now that we have May, and those are hot off the press, given this is June 1st, this morning we were adding up May numbers. And we're, I believe now really starting to see the effects of the activity, then the business activity that has gone down. I'm going to flip ahead. And as we talk about income tax, there's a lot of focus on that. And income tax is split across multiple funds in the city. We're somewhat unique in that. And so there are 7 distinct funds that income tax is split across. And I know you've seen this pie chart before, but we like to remind folks about that, and we love the colors. So there's a lot of funds that depend on income tax. Income tax is our second largest single source of revenue, the first being our electric income from electric sales. So how do we project what the loss is going to be? There's been lots of emails, lots of activity, lots of organizations trying to tell us and help us project what is this impact going to have. And so I've listed a few of those just so that you can see maybe kind of the variety and the wide range of those. The Ohio Government Finance Officers Association, that's what the GFOA group is, sent out a survey early on asking my counterparts all across the state, what did we think was going to be the impact of this? And so they compiled results. Most folks said they would experience a loss between 6 and 20% this year. That we wouldn't really fully bounce back until 2022, and about half that recovery would come in 2021. RETA, you may recognize the name RETA. It's an acronym for the Regional Income Tax Agency. And if a city doesn't collect their own income tax, it's probably RETA that does it for them. They contract out with municipalities that have decided not to do it in-house. And they had an estimate that came out very early that said, well, based on unemployment numbers and our projections, and again, it was kind of a guess, that we'd see a 20% reduction in the tax in the second quarter, 10% in the third quarter, and 5% in the fourth quarter. Flipping the page, the National League of Cities recently, this is not the Ohio League of Cities, but the National League of Cities, had a publication that came out and talked about 10 states that would be most impacted by this. And it's the states that have income tax. So the fact that we have local income tax is somewhat unique across the nation, but those states that do are going to be hardest hit. And Ohio, you see there, is one of those, and their estimate was a 30.4% loss. They're also saying unemployment would be 7.2% greater than expected. And certainly unemployment is a big factor in calculating what this is going to do to us. They've also said for every 1% increase in unemployment, a municipality will experience an additional 3% loss of revenue. Flipping the page. Lots of different ways to do this. Historically, in 2008 to 2010, we experienced an economic downturn. And in that first year, in 2008, we dropped 5.1% in our income tax revenues. The next year, 4.5%. And so while it's certainly a different dynamic and a different cause, that's, you know, one place that we have to look as to what happened in the past and how can we learn in the future. The other thing there I mentioned is, again, the delay in receipts and how we track that and the length of time it takes for us to get information in. And finally, unemployment, as we've mentioned a couple times. We've seen a big change. That chart there breaks out the unemployment for the country, the state, and then just Wood County. The April numbers were just released a few days ago. And so from March, Wood County had an unemployment rate of 4.6%, and in April, 17.1%. So a large difference. I put December 2008 and December 2009 just to kind of give us a kind of a comparison for when we had the last economic downturn and what those rates were. So certainly December 2009, 11.1 for the county. The next page, even on your printed sheet, is very colorful, but very difficult to read, and I apologize for that. But the point I guess I want to make with this is all of our surrounding counties have a higher unemployment rate than we do. Lucas, the highest of our neighbors, 23.7% in April. We were at 17.1. Hancock County to our south, 17.3, and the ones surrounding us. So the good news is Wood County hasn't been as hit as hard as some of our neighbors. But 17.1% still a pretty big number. Okay, so when do we see these and what do we think it's going to be? And so this is where it becomes a little bit more art than exact science, kind of taking all those things that we just looked at in organizations and guessing, you know, when you were going to see this. We certainly think we're going to see a rebound. The economy is beginning to get back, as we're aware. And so these are numbers that I've put down as my best guess, taking those other numbers into consideration. So I don't have anything different to say than my best guess on those. The months that haven't come in, so June through December, if my numbers are correct, will be $1.2 million short of what our estimate was originally for the year. And if I net that against the fact that we're still year-to-date up cumulatively by 80,000, we'll have a net loss of 1.1 million, and that's about 5.26% of what we thought we were. And if you look back on where we were in 2008, 2009, 2008, we were down 5.1%, 2009, 4.5%. That seems like that's in similar numbers there. So we won't know that till it happens, and we'll keep watching it, and we'll keep adjusting those as we see numbers coming in. We may need to revise that. So we'll be watching that monthly as we track this. So that's income tax. But on the next slide, I've put together in the general fund the top 17 revenue line items that we have. And those top 17 all have an estimate that they'll bring in over $100,000 in each line item in 2020. And some of those are certainly going to be stable and unaffected by this. And so if you look at the bottom half of the list, really starting with real estate and public utilities, that's primarily property tax. Having spoken with the county auditor, he really feels that's one of those lagging indicators that most people's property taxes are part of escrow. That's probably already collected. The bank already has that. He's not anticipating a drop in 2020 of real estate collections, real estate tax collections. That might be more of a factor next year as people may or may not have funds to be able to pay that and keep that escrow going. But so we've listed that kind of in the stable column. The refuse charges, as you were speaking, that's a stable item for us. Street cleaning, that's also a tax assessment. Some of those other items there, we aren't anticipating an immediate impact in any of those. The top of the list really is those items that we will be experiencing some kind of a decline in. The very top line is income tax, which we've talked about. And this is a good point to remember. This is just the general funds share of income tax. Remember, we have
Yes.
6 other funds that rely on income tax. So this is just the general funds portion of that. And the second line down, again, one of our, the second largest source of revenue in the general fund is that utility kilowatt tax. I'm sure you've heard from the Board of Utilities that electric sales have been down as high as 28% in a given month. And so when businesses and large organizations like the university aren't open, operating, manufacturing things, our electric usage is down, that trickle-down effect brings in less money to the general fund because we don't have as much being collected. So again, the percent change are, again, estimates that I've done talking with some of the folks that are directly involved. Interest income, and we'll see a slide on the very next page, but interest rates fell sharply. That's good for stimulating the economy and giving people help, but it's bad if you're trying to make money on cash that you have. Our ambulance runs have been down. The population in town is not as big with the students gone, and with folks not being out and about as much, they're staying safer inside their houses. Court activity is down. Hotel motel, as you can obviously imagine, is taking a big hit with this. And so while a big chunk of that goes to Wendy Chambers and the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the number here is kind of the net number that impacts the general fund because we still keep a piece of that. So that gives you an idea and a flavor that there's other items besides just income tax that are impacting the general fund, certainly of the city. Flipping the page. This is just kind of an example. I got this 2 weeks ago. And it compares what interest rates were a year ago, a week ago, and then a day ago. And you can see big differences in Star, Ohio, which is where many municipalities invest short-term cash, as well as a 2-year note, a 5-year note, big changes in those. So, all right, moving on. As we've said, there are multiple funds that get their primary source of revenue, and in many instances, their only source of revenue is from income tax. So the police levy, the fire levy, water and sewer capital improvement, our capital improvement, and our street fund all have a big chunk of revenue that comes from income tax. And so a reduction in income tax is going to impact all of those funds as well. So I've outlined in red there the anticipated drop in revenue that they might have in 2020 with our estimates. Parks and Recreation gets a small piece of income tax money. And so that's one reason they're up here. But it's also the other reason they're up here is because we're concerned about Parks and Recreation and the impact that the COVID virus has had on their operation. They get, I know Kristen likes to say a third, and that's pretty close. There's really kind of 4 sources here. Property tax, 946,000. Charge for services, that's all the fees people pay to rent a shelter or pay for a spinning class or go to the community center or go to swim lessons or go to the city pool. That's about 911,000 that we expected, and we expect that for the year, we'll be down by about half of that. A big chunk of that is the swimming pool, and certainly that had a big impact on that. Income tax, they get 518,000 on our original estimate. They'll be down about 28,000. So all totaled, the Parks and Recreation is going to have to figure out how they're going to cover a $484,000 hole. Some of that obviously is we're not hiring nearly the part-time seasonal folks. There's a bunch of those folks that end up at the pool. So we won't have the revenue from the pool, but we also won't have the expense side of the pool. But there's lots of work there to figure out how we're going to handle that shortfall. Council approved in 2007, I believe, or maybe it was 2006, a finance and debt policy. And in that finance and debt policy, there's a section that says, when necessary, the following budget balancing strategies will be used in order of priority. And we have used this in my tenure here multiple times because unfortunately we've been in situations where we had to look at those things. So it's been a good roadmap for us. It's been very positive. It gives us some direction on where to go. And I think as you look at those make sense. And as we flip the page really to my last page here today, we're trying to take those things into account as we look at how might we respond to these things. So on the last page, items under consideration, there are some things that have happened already that have been very positive. We've had revenue increases in some instances because of government action. So the first item, though, we were above our first quarter revenue projections. And again, statewide, I think the state was having a very good first quarter. And so we were all experiencing that. But the governor asked the Bureau of Workers' Compensation to distribute dollars in its funds and its accounts. And so workers' comp rebates, we've gotten 2 checks from them already, totaling nearly 300,000. But that 300,000 is distributed based on the funds that contributed to workers' comp. So that doesn't all go to the general fund. Some of that's utility money, some of that's general fund, goes to the police levy, fire levy. It's split wherever it was the source of that funds. We got money from the federal government, $15,000 for COVID supplies, and we didn't have to apply for that. That was a nice thing. So we got some money there. We got some grant dollars that reduced our local share for our transportation funds. So the ODOT dollars, the state provided and federal government provided some dollars that we don't have to do local share. And there's a bill that has been passed by the passed by the Senate, still under consideration for the House, that would distribute some of the federal dollars that the state received. If that passes, we believe we'll get some of those dollars that will be distributed the same way our local government funds are distributed from Columbus. We just have to make sure that we have allowable uses for those funds that, are attached to that federal bill when it was passed. So certainly other options that we have to consider as we look at the impact of this is cash that we have on hand and reducing expenditures. So Lori has instituted a hiring freeze. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of empty positions, but those are certainly being heavily scrutinized. And at this point, we've not hired any empty positions. Department heads were asked to submit budget reductions, and we're looking at those. We haven't taken action on that, but department heads need to be looking at their budgets and seeing what do we do? How do we go from here? Salary increases were built into the budget. We've talked about eliminating those. Furlough days, you've heard that in the news from lots of organizations. So there's things certainly that many other places have already instituted that we have not yet. And in part, we didn't know the magnitude. So if you wait too long, then you have to cut deeply. If you react too soon, you don't know what you're shooting at. And so we want to try and strike a happy balance so that we at least have a target in the distance that we know what we're aiming at, but can act appropriately. So that is my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
What about the contracts for police and fire that are negotiable this year? Or are they going to be frozen automatically?
Right. So one of the items there, the elimination of salary increases for the current year, we have 5 contracts that are due this year.
Fine.
All 5 of them. A couple of the unions have agreed to just freeze salaries currently and extend kind of that negotiation session into next year. They haven't all done that. We're starting negotiations with one of the other unions. But certainly, I think with all the items in the news, our position is going to be no salary increases this year. But we'll talk. We'll negotiate in fairness here.
Thank you.
Brian, the estimates that you've come up with, it's a very difficult task. Do you have a sense of, sometimes when people give estimates, they give like a min, a max, and a most likely, the max being the worst case scenario and so forth. Where would you put your estimates in terms of rosy scenario, dire scenario, in between?
I think probably in between. It's certainly not the dire scenario. I've tried not to be too thin and too rosy a picture, but so it's probably more on the middle end and certainly not on the dire side.
Okay. Yeah, it's a balancing act. Thank you. when do you need action by us? Of course,
at-
that depends on a lot of factors, and it's
Right,
kind of an
and-
unfair question, but
And Lori may be talking about that later, but at this point, these are the options that we're considering. And so far, nothing that council needs to take action on. So
thank you.
And on any given month, how long into the following month does it take before you actually have good revenue numbers? Is it a full month later, or is it?
Depends on the category. And if we're
Income
talk-
tax, I'm talking income tax.
So income tax, if you're a large employer and you're required, because your payroll is above a certain threshold, you're required to withhold monthly. And that withholding is due the 15th of the following month. And most of our places don't send that to us in the mail, but they could. And so it's a postmark by the 15th of the month. So it's usually, even if they do an ACH on the 15th, it shows up a business day or two later. So that's for the larger institutions. If you're a smaller institution and aren't required to file monthly and you file quarterly, your due date is the end of the month following the quarter. So,
These May numbers here on your chart are really an estimate, because you just don't have the data yet, and it'll be into June before you can really quantify May.
right.
So it could actually look a little bit uglier than it does now, depending on how things go.
Yes. And so you'll notice that June and July, the percentage decrease that we're projecting at the moment for those 2 months individual are the highest two that we have. We know that July, again, swapped for April, but some people have paid in April and some people have trickled in that, tax deadline filing. So I don't think everybody isn't waiting till July. And we don't want them to wait till July. But I think July will probably be our most difficult month. And we hope then with businesses starting to reopen and things coming back. One of the things that I think delayed, not only just timing, but delayed the impact to us is the PPP program that the federal government, so the payroll preservation protection. I think people have been getting paid with that. I think people took advantage of that, and that's a taxable benefit. That's still salary. So, but companies get that. They're still paying their employees. So that's salary and it's taxable, unlike unemployment. So if you go on unemployment, the city doesn't tax that. Federal does, but state and local do not.
Okay. Oh, this is a nice setting the stage type of presentation. Do you have any more questions, or Bill? Or
Very
Sandy?
easy to understand. You've done a great job of bringing it down to our level.
And
Thank you.
yeah, and I appreciate this report because it's exactly what I would hope it would be, in that it sets the stage for where we are as best you know today, and prepares us so that we're not shocked the next time you speak to us. For instance, if we don't have another committee meeting for a quarter, you'll have a lot more data, and that data may be a lot of red ink, and I get that. And I think we're going to be prepared for the reality of what it looks like when fewer people are working and paying income tax. And
You have on your agenda tonight a first reading for the 2021 revenue estimate. And we get those forms and stuff from the county. We need to submit that in July. That's why you get the first reading when you do. But that's going to be tough to try and guess. So
you can only do what you could do, right?
I have a dartboard in my office that,
Yeah. You've got no history to base an estimate on. It's tough. You and every other person in your shoes in the country, right?
Right.
Well, since there are no more thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
I
Appreciate
appreciate the
thank you.
the update. It's very informative. Thank you. So again, that really concludes what I'd hoped to accomplish here, and that's to lay the foundation of information for all of us to digest as we move forward, because I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard for all of us to get our arms around as we move forward, because although we don't know the scope of the reduction, we know that it's going to be red ink, and we're just going to have to wait month to month to see what the reality is. And everything we do
And
in the city that requires the expenditure of tax dollars is going to be impacted by by what we're seeing. So again, I just got to thank you for that very detailed report. So
I appreciate the administration getting a head start on some of these potential scenarios. Appreciate it.
further?
I've said, yeah, I appreciate the report and the fact that we have some knowledge of what we're in for. And I appreciate the fact that you don't have the facts. I'm sitting here thinking, and what if the university doesn't have on-site education this fall? There's so many things hanging out there that are so very, very important that we can't answer. So thank you very much. You've done a good job.
Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, my intent right now, unless something comes up, is to have a meeting at 6 p.m. on July 20th prior to our scheduled meeting. Unless, I haven't confirmed that with Kay, but I'll do that.
It's on the calendar.
It's already on there. Okay. And we'll, as I said, at that point, we'll at a minimum, we'll look at two things. We'll look at the second quarter numbers for recycling and waste, and we'll get another update on what income tax really looked like. So thanks, everybody. Concludes the committee meeting.
You're ready. Okay. Please rise and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Kay, could you call the roll, please?
Harold,
Here.
Hollenbaugh,
Here.
Leontis,
Here.
Phipps. Phipps. No. Robinette,
Here.
Roland,
Here,
Zanfordino.
Here. Okay. The minutes from our meeting on May 18th were distributed prior to this meeting for your review. Are there any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of,
I move that we approve the minutes of May 18th.
I second.
2020.
okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Correspondence. Kay, do we have correspondence this evening?
Yes, I have two items this evening, and I distributed to you prior to the meeting a listing of budget transfers to be made for the month of June, and those require your approval.
Mr. President,
Ms. Rowland.
I move that we accept the budget transfers.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the budget transfers, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Budget transfers are approved.
Okay, and secondly, I distributed to you prior to the meeting the financial budget summary report for the month of April 2020. And that's all I have.
Okay. Let's see, that'll bring us to lobby visitations. Have we received any?
No,
Lobby
I have not
visitation.
received anything.
Okay. Introduction of new legislation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
from the Finance and Ways and Means Committee, I have 2 resolutions and 3 ordinances. First, a resolution adopting the estimate of revenues for the year 2021. A resolution authorizing the mayor to submit an application to request funding from the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration for the Woodbridge Business Park infrastructure improvements. I have an ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2020. I have an ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator and the utilities director to seek qualifications and/or advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for design, engineering, right-of-way acquisition, construction, and other services relating to the Economic Development Administration grant funding projects. And I have an ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator to sign an LPA agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation and to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for design, engineering, right-of-way acquisition and construction and other services relating to the construction of a roundabout at the intersection of East Wooster Street and Campbell Hill Road.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zanfordino.
from the Community Improvement Committee, we have a resolution adopting amendments to Community Development Block Grant Citizen Participation Plan for the city of Bowling Green.
Mr. President,
Mr. Leontis.
from the Public Utilities Committee, we have an ordinance accepting an easement for utility purposes from Whitston Properties, LLC.
Thank you.
Did we wait for him to pass it on?
It's already here.
Oh, okay.
Official reports, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. We had an active weekend in Bowling Green over the weekend. I want to start with a positive. The positive was, and from my perspective anyways, was the parade that originated at the high school and ended up coming down Main Street, portions of West Worcester. What a terrific event. I hope that, all of you had an opportunity to get out and see it. I was fortunate enough, along with Miss Lori, to see the parade here on North Main Street. And I was just thrilled for those kids that they had the opportunity to participate in that, certainly considering the circumstances that affected their senior years. So congratulations to, number one, all the students, including Andrew Robinette. Greg, congratulations to you and your family and Andrew. But all of the graduates, we've remarked in the past about how this year has created so many unprecedented challenges for all of us and lost opportunities, missed opportunities. Well, it affected those kids' senior year. So I'm really grateful that the school officials did what they did to create this really unique opportunity, at least unique to Bowling Green. I think it's not happened here before that I'm aware of. And it was really great community turnout. I've had several people say to me today that maybe that's something that we should consider doing, even when we're able in the future to turn back to more traditional graduation ceremonies, because providing an opportunity for people that maybe didn't have, kids in school, but still would relish an opportunity to congratulate our high school graduates. So hopefully that's something we can talk about, because I thought it was just terrific. In terms of other events over the weekends, I want to say that our city safety services distinguished themselves this weekend. Should not be a surprise to you. It was not a surprise to me. But once again, we see the value of both our police and our fire division. Examples clearly in front of our eyes over the weekend. Saturday, the fire department responded to a fire in an occupied apartment building on North Main Street. As we would expect, they replied promptly, professionally, fire was extinguished. People that were in the building were helped out of the building, and there was no injuries to the best of my knowledge. So again, these things become routine, or there becomes a certain level of expectation that when the phone call is made, the response is going to be made. We can't take that for granted. We're very fortunate to have such highly trained and dedicated professionals on our fire department. So I want to say thank you to them. Sunday, of course, provided another challenge for our community. I know that you're all aware of the peaceful protests that occurred over the weekend, and I think that I was, number one, really relieved when I got home last night. It was after 10 o'clock. I'm not going to lie to you, it was a stressful day. And, we were all very concerned about the possibilities. We're seeing things that are occurring in other communities, and that was the last thing we wanted to happen in Bowling Green. So, and there's a lot of credit to go around for that. I think that, first of all, I would credit those that participated in the demonstration. As we made clear to them when we were fortunate to have an opportunity to meet with the organizers of the event on Saturday afternoon. We made clear to them that we respected their right to protest, and we understood why in this day that they would be needing to do that. So we encouraged them that again, we supported them, and we let them know that we thought that our community could benefit from hearing their story. And it became our priority to just simply to help them organize an event that was going to be held safely. And from the very beginning, Chief Hetrick was involved in that meeting along with Lori Treader. Chief, folks, I'm going to tell you what, our police chief is incredible. I've known this, I've had great respect for Tony for a long time, but if you could have been in the room on Saturday and watched him interact with the organizers of this event, you'd have been so proud. I was. And then to watch the way that our police division conducted themselves on Saturday, on Sunday during the midst of the events, again, we have so much to be proud of. Top to bottom, our police division was appropriate, supportive, and we ended up getting through it. There was no arrests, no property damage, and we had the opportunity as a community to hear the message from the people that came to share with us. So I can't say it enough, guys. I'm just incredibly impressed with the work that was done. I know that if Tony were here, and I know Tony's listening, I hope he's listening because he needs to hear this. Tony would say that he had a great deal of collaboration with the event. I know that in addition to Bowling Green Police Department, there was coordination with the Wood County Sheriff's Department, Ohio Highway Patrol, Bowling Green State University Law Enforcement, and Hancock County Sheriff's Department. All of these diverse law enforcement entities came together and coordinated in a way that I was amazed with. Of course, that's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to kind of see the workings of something like that. But the professionalism, the dedication was really something. So I just think that we as a community owe a debt of gratitude to both of these fine groups of individuals, our police department, our fire department. I just can't say it enough how impressed I am and thankful. So I just wanted to share that with you because I'm sure that you all would appreciate hearing those things. I know I'm not telling you a whole lot that you don't know, but it's important to me to take an opportunity to say these things publicly so that these men and women get the recognition that they deserve. So that is my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to thank you for all the work you put in over the weekend, and this is a heck of a first year of being mayor. And I also wanted to take a moment, there's plenty of people to thank, and rightly so. You thanked the safety forces, but the citizens, as well as those that chose to exercise their constitutional right, also had a role to play, and they did a great job as well. The message, as you mentioned, the message was made, and in an environment where we could concentrate on the message as instead of being distracted by other factors. So yes, the city, all the safety forces, yourself, the citizens that watched, and those that participated all should be commended for something that shows that's the character that we wish to see in our community as well as the nation.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Other
Hey,
questions?
Mr. Mayor, I know I said it to you privately, but publicly, I want to say congratulations to you and every person in the city that was involved with that. It was a well executed opportunity for citizens to express their views. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
I'd like just a short shout out to some of the young adults who made it their responsibility to be greeters, along the way. There were water stations set up, so if people needed water, they were given water. Even candy was distributed along the way, and cookie jar cookies, which are one of the best things you can give a visitor to our town, were distributed by these young people. So I was very proud of the way they handled themselves and be greeters and be kind. And we had a lot of out of towners, but they let these young folks let them know what we were here for and still greeted them with kindness rather than begrudging what they were doing.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Sandy. I noticed that on West Worcester Street, somewhat adjacent to the police station across the street, there was a business, I believe, a martial arts
Yes,
academy.
it was students
And-
from there.
Yeah, and I wish I would have taken the time, and I apologize for not doing so, to learn the name of the business, or remember the name of the business and the people that are involved in running that. They were incredible.
They were.
All evening long, to and from their business to the Worcester Green with cases of water and pizza and cookies, and just another example of how people did the right thing.
Yes, and then there were even younger ones. They looked like teenagers that were handing out popsicles,
Yeah,
taking care of anyone who needed a little refreshment of something cold. So that showing was just it just made my heart go pitter patter.
I agree. Thank you, Sandy.
Mr. President, let me just take one moment and build on your opening comments about the high school parade. As the parent of a graduate, I had the opportunity to drive one of the vehicles, so I got to see the entire route. And I just would like to take this opportunity to, on behalf of the entire graduating class and all the parents, to thank the citizens of Bowling Green for coming out, because as I drove the route, it was the most tremendous showing of support. I knew the community would come out, but not in the strength that it did. And I think our community needs to be congratulated for that, because these kids, they had a unique year, so they really appreciated it. And to a kid, and I talked to at least 20 or 30 kids after the ceremonies, they're taking pictures and so forth, and they all couldn't say anything but nice things about the event. So thanks to the citizens of Bowling Green for coming out and showing your love to the class of 2020. So,
Thank you, Greg.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Municipal Administrator, Ms. Treader.
Good evening. Before all of you at your desk this evening, you should have received the application for the designated outdoor refreshment area, most commonly referred to as Adora. So this is the first step in the process for council's consideration. We talked about this a little bit at your last meeting, but this application has been officially submitted to you. And the next step is that you are recommended, you need to hold a public hearing on this application. Kay will advertise that hearing for 2 consecutive weeks in the newspaper. Then you will hold the hearing, and then you can act from there. Although you cannot take official action until 30 days from today. That would be the soonest that you could act on it. However, you can hold your public hearing in the meantime. This will be posted on the city's website tomorrow, because one of the requirements is that it be available for public view. With our facility still closed, we think that would be the fastest way to get it out to people to be able to review it as well. So do you have any questions on this process? Mark, do you
No.
want to set your hearing now, or do you want to wait until committee meeting time?
Kay, what were we going to do? Were we going to do it on the,
June
15th?
15th at 6
Okay.
o'clock is
all
what
right,
you reserved.
all right. So then we will have a committee of the whole meeting at 6 o'clock on June 15th to discuss the designated outdoor refreshment area.
Okay, and instructions will be put out for how people can participate in that via Zoom, that they would be able to testify on there, and Kay will have that in the notice.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds
great.
good. Any other questions or comments? Or
That
were
meeting,
you finished? Did I cut you off?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
that meeting then will be the public hearing, the one on the 15th?
Yes.
Yes. Great.
Our planning director, Parks and Recreation director, and Public Works director are not physically here, although they are available online. They do not have formal reports for you, although we could answer questions, or I could try to answer them, anything you may have for them as well.
Are there any questions for those present in their absence?
Nice.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I know that the utilities director does not have anything he needs to report to us, but he is here should someone have questions for him.
You skipped Mike.
Hmm?
You skipped Mike.
Well, I'll get to mine.
Okay.
I'm saving the best for last.
Oh, okay.
Nothing? Okay. And of course, Mr. Marsh is here, should someone have questions for him this evening. Okay, seeing none. Moving on. Council committee reports. Are there any committee reports for this evening?
Yes, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Robinette.
We, at 6 p.m. this evening, there was a meeting of the Finance and Ways and Means Committee to discuss current city finances, at which time we received a report from the finance director, and there's a slide set that goes with that. And I know that 5 of us were physically present in the room for that, so I won't go into the details. But we were presented enough information to lay a base of knowledge about our financial situation, so that as we receive future quarterly reports, we'll be better prepared to digest and absorb that information as we slowly move towards 2021.
And I'd like to say to Brian Bouchon, thank you very much for your report. I know there's a lot of guesswork involved there, but I feel fairly confident in your guesswork, so thank you very much. Okay, Kay, reading of legislation.
Legislation for first reading. Resolution number 3766 for first reading. Resolution adopting the estimate of revenues for the year 2021. Resolution number 3767 for first reading. Resolution authorizing the mayor to submit an application to request funding from U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration for the Woodbridge Business Park infrastructure improvements. Resolution number 3768 for first reading. Resolution adopting amendments to Community Development Block Grant Citizen Participation Plan for the City of Bowling Green. Ordinance number 8849 for first reading. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2020 and ending December 31, 2020.
Oh, we wouldn't. Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I'm sorry, Kate, could you read the number again?
Yes,
I just-
8849.
8849. I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 8849 its second and third reading.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kay, could you call the roll?
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Leontis,
Yes.
and Phipps. Not there. Robinette,
Yes.
Roland,
Yes,
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended for ordinance 8849 to give it its second and third readings.
Ordinance number 8849 for second and third reading, ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2020 and ending December 31, 2020.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette,
I move that we adopt ordinance 8849.
Second,
properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on ordinance 8849? Okay, seeing none. Kay, could you call the roll?
Leontis,
Yes.
Phipps, Robinette,
Yes.
Roland.
yes,
Zanfordino,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh.
Yes. Okay, ordinance 8849 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8850 for first reading, ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator and the utilities director to seek qualifications and/or advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for the design, engineering, right-of-way acquisition, construction, and other services relating to the Economic Development Administration grant funding projects. Ordinance number 8851 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator to sign an LPA agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation and to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for design, engineering, right-of-way acquisition, construction, and other services related to the construction of a roundabout at the intersection of East Wooster Street and Campbell Hill Road.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Harold.
I just wanted to relay to interested citizens that there's a request that this be passed at the June 15th meeting. So although it's given its first reading tonight, to meet the request, we'd be giving it its second and third next time unless we decide to give the second tonight. My point is that if there is a desire by citizens to let their thoughts be known concerning this particular portion of what we hope to do to the East Wooster Street corridor, that it would be better to let us know sooner rather than later, because it's not going to go probably not going to go three separate readings. So I'd be eager to hear any input from citizens related to this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ordinance number 8852 for first reading, ordinance accepting an easement for utility purposes from Whitson Properties LLC. And that's all the legislation we have.
Okay. Is there any other business to come before City Council this evening? Seeing none?
may I,
Oh, go
do
ahead.
we need to excuse Rachel?
Well,
Is that a technical difficulty or?
We probably should excuse her
okay,
I move to
because she didn't vote.
excuse her.
all right.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to excuse Rachel, who's here 50%. Yes,
But it's a full excuse. You were.
it is a full excuse, yes.
All in favor, need a voice vote, please.
All right. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is that Rachel?
Mhm.
Okay. Any other business? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.